Hey everybody. So it is here, the Stanley Cup Final. We know the matchup now, St. Louis versus Boston. We know the start date, Monday night, 8 p.m., Game 1. It's here. It is finally time for the Stanley Cup Final, and when we get done, over the next couple of weeks, one team will be walking away Stanley Cup champion, and the NHL season will sadly be at an end. But this is a really exciting matchup. I think this is going to be a really fun matchup to watch, and I just wanted to kind of go through and preview the Stanley Cup Final here between the Blues and the Bruins. So, St. Louis versus Boston, as you can see here, are the teams' paths to the Stanley Cup Final. For St. Louis, they started out the playoffs beating Winnipeg in 6 games. They had a 7-game series against the Dallas Stars in the second round, and then they just finished off San Jose in 6. For Boston, they started out with what was probably their toughest series of the playoffs against Toronto, where they won in 7. Then they beat Columbus in 6, and they steamrolled the Carolina Hurricanes in 4 games in a sweep in the Eastern Conference Final. Both teams are playing very, very good hockey right now. Both teams are getting tremendous goaltending right now. And I think looking at this final, this is going to be a very tight matchup. I think there's no doubt about it. This series, I think, without a doubt, goes 6 or 7 games. I think both teams are able to win at home or on the road. And I think it's going to be a really, really close, a lot of one-goal games. Probably a number of overtime games, at least a couple. I think this is going to be neck and neck the whole way through. For St. Louis, let's talk about the Blues a little bit first, because the St. Louis Blues should not have been anywhere near the playoffs, never mind the Stanley Cup, just a few months ago. This was a team that was supposed to be fighting for the first overall pick in the NHL draft in December, and now, 5-6 months later, this team is fighting for the Stanley Cup. What the Blues did this season was completely remarkable, and I have never, ever seen an in-season turnaround like we had this year with the St. Louis Blues. This team was dead last in the entire NHL at the beginning of January. Dead last. Your season's supposed to be over. That's supposed to be it. That's not what happened with St. Louis. They didn't give up. They didn't just roll over and quit. This team kept working, and in the second half of the season, they absolutely caught fire, rolled through their opponents, got into the playoffs, and now that has continued into the playoffs, and they've been the hottest team in the league from January on. And there's no doubt about that. No other team has been this hot for this long of a stretch from January on than the St. Louis Blues. It's absolutely remarkable what this team did, and it all started with the call-up of Jordan Binnington. Goaltending is going to play a massive, massive role in this series, and the Blues have probably, Tuukka Rask has been unreal for the Bruins in the postseason, especially. His postseason this year has been unbelievable. But Jordan Binnington has been incredibly good too, and Binnington has been, leading this team from January on. He has been leading this team to the promised land for them for months now. And Binnington's stellar play has continued into the playoffs. He has done more than enough to keep winning them games and winning them series. And it's just been absolutely phenomenal to watch Jordan Binnington and what he's done this season. I was watching this guy play for the Providence Bruins on loan a couple seasons ago in the AHL, and now he is leading a team to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's just unbelievable, and he has been remarkable in the regular season, just as good in the playoffs, and I think goaltending is going to play a major, major role in this series. This is going to be a low-scoring series, because you have 2 great goaltenders in net for both of these teams. Another thing with St. Louis, their defense is playing very, very well, and they have an active defense that can jump up, especially guys like Bouwmeester and Pietrangelo and Parayko. They can jump up and get involved offensively and also play strong defense. They're a big defense. I mean, Parayko is huge. Joel Edmondson, Robert Bortuzzo's a physical guy. They've got a physical big defense that can jump up into the play and add some offense. They've got good depth. Obviously, they have some really high-end players with Ryan O'Reilly, Vladimir Tarasenko, Braden Shen, Jaden Schwartz. The offense is there. The defense is there. The goaltending is there. This Blues team has been, obviously, they were supposed to be really good all season long. They weren't the first half of the season, which was, I think, a huge surprise. But what they've been able to do in the second half has just been remarkable. And it's their leaders leading the way. It's their depth players, guys like Alex Steen, Tyler Bozak, Pat Maroon, helping out along the way. The goaltending, the defense, the whole package is there with the St. Louis Blues. Moving over to the Boston Bruins, man, Boston, this team just continues to defy my expectations. I thought, really once Tampa was out of it, the road kind of opened up for them. And then once Tampa and Washington were out of it, I mean, Boston became, I think, the favorite as far as the Eastern Conference goes. But they certainly have not had an easy road to the finals. That first series in Toronto, or against Toronto, they did not play all that well. I thought they were going to end up losing that series. They weren't playing good hockey, and it really they had me worried there for a while. But the thing about this Bruins team is they have gotten better and better as the playoffs have gone on, and you don't always see that. A lot of times teams start to get tired, they run out of gas. They start to make more mistakes. But Boston's worst series to this point was in the first round against Toronto. They still found a way to win that in Game 7. Then they went on. They played a tough series against Columbus, but overall I think they played very well in that Columbus series. And then, I mean, it was just lights out against Carolina. That series was never even close. Boston dominated the Hurricanes. And Boston is getting better and better as the playoffs have gone on, and that, I think, is a very good sign for them. Obviously, Tuukka Rask has been unbelievable. His playoff numbers are out of this world. He's had an incredible postseason, and we'll see if that can continue through the fourth and final round of these playoffs for the Bruins. Boston is a pretty physical team. They are not afraid to play, big boy hockey. And I think St. Louis is that way as well. With that Sharks series for the Blues was a very physical series. So, I mean, we've got two teams that are not afraid to throw the body around. I think this is going to be a very physical Stanley Cup Final. It's not going to be a repeat of 2011. Things aren't going to get that out of control or that nasty. The game's just different now. The game's not played physically at that level anymore. But I do think for 2019 standards, I think this will be a very physical Stanley Cup Final. And Boston, they have depth as well, especially Charlie Coyle and Marcus Johansson have really turned it on in the playoffs. They were the two deadline additions for the Bruins. They didn't have the best starts to their careers in Boston. Johansson got hurt. Coyle was playing well, but couldn't get any offense going. Couldn't finish. In these playoffs, both of those guys have really picked it up and gotten a lot better as the playoffs have gone on, much like the team has. So that gives Boston now 3 solid scoring lines, a physical fourth line that can occasionally chip in offense as well, and they're also very deep. So really, I think these are two pretty similar teams in a lot of ways. They play similar style of hockey. They have high-end offense. Boston's first line with Marchand, Bergeron, and Pastrnak is one of the best top lines in the entire league, if not the best. They've got solid defense cores. They've got depth. They can play physical. They have great goaltenders. I think this is a very even matchup. This is a very similar two very similar teams going at it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Like I said earlier, I don't see any way that this series goes less than 6 games. These teams are way too evenly matched. Both teams can win in either building. Boston has not had any problems winning on the road in these playoffs. And neither has St. Louis. St. Louis has been phenomenal on the road in other teams' arenas in this postseason. Both teams can obviously win at home as well. Boston always has had a very good home ice advantage, and St. Louis, they just won Game 6 to close out the conference final on home ice. They can win in their own building as well. So, I mean, when you look at it, you've got St. Louis, who really, is a shock to even be here if you had said that they were going to the Stanley Cup Final 6 months ago, but is really the hottest team. And the thing that really scares me about the St. Louis Blues is that it just feels like they are Destiny's team this year. It feels like this is their year. They're supposed to win this year. Now, the thing about that is last year, Vegas felt like Destiny's team. It felt like this was just supposed to be Vegas's time to shine. Vegas's year last year, and they ended up losing in the finals. They made it all the way to the finals, but ended up losing. So we'll see if St. Louis can close it out or not, and go all the way. But it feels like St. Louis is Destiny's team this year. This team just... The in-season turnaround from where they were dead last in the league to where they are now, it just feels like the universe is on their side and pulling for St. Louis. For Boston, obviously, the layoff, the 11 days without a game, that is concerning, especially given the way other teams have played after long layoffs. And I talked about that in my last video. If you haven't seen that yet and you want to go back and watch that, where I talked about how important Game 1 is going to be for Boston. These teams that have had long layoffs have not played well, especially early in the next series. So Boston really needs to buck that trend in Game 1 and really come out firing. But, I mean, this is going to be a long series between two very, very good teams. And, I think, for Boston, Game 1 is vital. If Boston can come out and win Game 1, and this is exactly what I said in the last video, it shuts everyone up talking about how bad the layoff is, and it shuts everyone up talking about a sweep because of this pattern that's developed in the Eastern Conference, where once you sweep a team, you get swept. You get swept in the next round. So Boston can shut up both of the people talking about both of those things if they win Game 1. If St. Louis goes into Boston and wins Game 1, there goes your home ice advantage. There goes, that puts St. Louis in the driver's seat. And no team wins a series in Game 1 or loses a series in Game 1. You've got plenty of chances after that to bounce back. But, a win in Game 1 for St. Louis would be huge, and winning Game 1 for Boston would be huge. And I think that in this particular series, just the way things have gone in the playoffs this year, I think this particular Game 1 means a little bit more than most. I think Game 1 of this series is going to be very, very important and really give the winning team a serious boost going the rest of the way. Game 1 is Monday night, Memorial Day night, 8 p.m. on NBC. Should be a really good game. Hopefully will be. I'll certainly be watching, and I plan on streaming, and I got a little surprise for you guys Monday night. But Boston, St. Louis, Stanley Cup Final should be a lot of fun to watch, and a really, really good matchup between two very good teams who both could easily win the Stanley Cup. Both of these teams could very much win this series. And I expect a lot of one-goal games. I expect things to be very tight all the way through. And a couple weeks from now, one team is going to be lifting the cup over their head, and another team is going to be going home very, very disappointed. But with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.